Arguments. We've all been there. One moment you're calmly discussing whose turn it is to take out the trash, and the next you're saying things you don't even mean. Voices rise, hearts race. That invisible line of respect gets crossed, and suddenly it's not about the trash anymore. It's about who's right and who's hurt. Here's the thing. Fighting doesn't mean something is broken. It means you care. It means you're human. But how we fight, that changes everything. Most people assume arguing has to be messy, like a storm rolling in with no warning. Words hurl like lightning bolts, and you leave the battlefield feeling worse than when you started. Sound familiar? But what if I told you that an argument doesn't have to feel like war? What if I told you it could actually bring you closer to the person you love? Surprising, right? The truth is, love and arguments aren't opposites. They coexist, and if done right, they can strengthen the bond you have. Imagine arguments where you feel heard, where respect stays intact, and where the goal isn't to win, but to grow, together. It's not some magical dream. It's what happens when you fight fair. In this journey, we'll explore how to argue with love, with intention, and yes, with respect. Because the words you use during a fight can build bridges or burn them, and the choice, my friend, is yours, ready to turn your fights into moments of connection. Let's dive in. Because love isn't about avoiding arguments. It's about learning how to show up for them. 1. Pause before you react. Ever notice how the sharpest words are often the ones we spit out in the heat of the moment? It's like our brain turns into a pressure cooker and boom, we release whatever's bubbling up inside. But here's a truth that hits hard. Words can't be unsaid. They linger. They sting, and sometimes they damage more than the argument itself. Pausing before you react is simple, but it's not easy. It takes self-awareness and a commitment to staying calm when your emotions are anything but. Picture this. In the middle of an argument, you feel anger rising like a wave. Instead of riding it recklessly, you stop. You take a breath, maybe two. You let silence hang there for a moment. That pause, it's your superpower. It stops the argument from spiraling into unnecessary hurt and gives you a moment to choose how to respond, not just react. Next time you feel that urge to snap or fire back, stop. Take a beat. Ask yourself, what am I really trying to say here? That small pause can change the entire tone of the argument and remind you that respect always comes first. 2. Listen to understand, not to respond. Let's be honest. Most of us think we're listening during an argument, but what we're really doing is waiting for our turn to speak. We're not hearing the other person. We're preparing our comeback, our defense, or our proof that we're right. But here's the kicker. If no one's truly listening, what's the point of talking at all? Listening to understand requires you to put your ego on pause and lean into the other person's perspective, even when you don't agree with it. It's not about winning the argument. It's about understanding where they're coming from. When someone feels heard, walls come down and the conversation softens. That's when real progress happens. Listening this way does something magical. It de-escalates tension. It shifts the focus from proving who's right to creating connection. And often, when someone feels heard, they naturally start listening to you too. Because arguments aren't about speaking louder. They're about hearing each other better. 3. Use I statements, not blame. It's so easy to point fingers during an argument, isn't it? You never listen to me. You always do this. You make me feel... Blame feels natural when we're hurt or frustrated because it shifts the weight of the issue onto someone else. But here's the problem. The second you say you, the other person stops hearing your message and starts defending themselves. Suddenly, the argument isn't about the problem. It's about protecting their pride. This is where I statements come in. Instead of blaming, you own your feelings and share your perspective. For example, replace "you never care about what I want" with "I feel unheard when my opinions aren't considered." See the difference? The first sounds like an attack. The second opens a door for understanding. By focusing on your feelings rather than their flaws, you create space for conversation instead of conflict. Using I statements isn't about tiptoeing around the truth. It's about expressing yourself in a way that invites the other person to listen instead of shut down. You're still being honest. You're just doing it with respect and care. Next time you feel anger bubbling up, pause and reframe. Start with "I feel" or "I need" instead of "you did." It takes practice, but trust me, it works. Arguments become less about who's at fault and more about finding a solution together. Because the goal isn't to pin blame, it's to communicate and move forward as a team. 4. Don't drag the past into the present. Here's something we're all guilty of: digging up old arguments during a new one. "Oh, so now you care about this. Remember last time when you didn't?" It's tempting, isn't it? Especially when we're hurt. We think bringing up the past strengthens our case, like we're building a legal argument, but in reality, it just makes the fight messier and harder to resolve. Instead of fixing the current issue, you're throwing fuel on the fire. Dragging the past into an argument does two things. It overwhelms the conversation and makes the other person feel hopeless. Here's the truth. If you've forgiven something in the past, let it stay there. If you haven't forgiven it, that's a different conversation, but it doesn't belong in the middle of today's argument. Focus on the present issue, the here and now. When you find yourself tempted to say, "you always," or "just like that time," stop and ask yourself, what am I really upset about right now? Keeping the fight in the present doesn't mean ignoring past hurt. It means respecting the moment you're in. When you tackle one issue at a time, you're far more likely to find a resolution. Because the goal isn't to win an argument about everything, it's to solve the problem at hand and move forward together. 5. Take breaks when things get heated. Let's be real, sometimes arguments get too intense. Voices rise, emotions boil over, and suddenly you're not even sure what you're fighting about anymore. In moments like that, the best thing you can do isn't to keep pushing through, it's to take a break. Stepping away doesn't mean giving up. It means giving yourselves the space to cool down and think clearly. When emotions are running high, it's nearly impossible to be fair, kind, or rational. You're not listening anymore, you're reacting. And when you're reacting out of anger, hurt, or frustration, you risk saying things you don't mean. A quick "I need a minute" can be the most loving thing you do in an argument. It's not avoidance, it's self-awareness. It's recognizing that in this moment, you're not helping the conversation, you're hurting it. Use that time to breathe, reflect, or take a walk. Anything that helps you clear your head. Then when you come back, you're not driven by raw emotions anymore. You're clearer, calmer, and ready to listen and speak with love, because sometimes the most productive step forward is knowing when to pause. 6. Focus on solving the problem, not winning the fight. Here's the hard truth. If your goal in an argument is to win, you've already lost. Because when two people care about each other, it's not you versus them, it's both of you versus the problem. When you're busy keeping score, pointing out flaws, or aiming to be right, you forget what really matters, finding a solution that works for both of you. Think about it. Have you ever won an argument and felt genuinely happy afterward? Probably not. Even if you won, the other person might feel unheard, dismissed, or hurt, and that doesn't bring you closer. The real victory in any disagreement is progress, understanding, and finding common ground. Arguments shouldn't feel like battles where someone has to lose. The goal is to walk away feeling like you're on the same team, because in the end, solving the problem together builds trust, connection, and love, far more than winning ever will. 7. Choose your words carefully. They last longer than the fight. Have you ever said something in anger and regretted it the second it left your mouth? Maybe you threw out an insult, brought up a sensitive insecurity, or said something just to sting. Here's the thing. Words are powerful. Even after the fight is over, they echo in the other person's mind like a song on repeat. You might move on, but those words can linger for days, months, even years. In the heat of an argument, it's easy to throw words around carelessly because we want to express how upset we are. But instead of helping, those words create wounds, wounds that don't heal quickly. They chip away at trust and love, leaving scars where closeness used to be. Arguments don't have to leave damage behind. If you choose your words carefully, the fight might still be tough, but you'll come out of it with respect and love still intact. And that's what really matters. Here's something wild to think about. Healthy relationships aren't the ones where people never argue. Nope. Arguments happen because you're two different people with your own feelings, thoughts, and quirks. The real magic lies in how you argue. Are you building bridges or burning them? Are you listening to connect, or are you fighting to win? If you've made it this far, I want you to pause for a second. Think about the last argument you had, maybe with your partner, a friend, or even family. How did it go? Did you pause before reacting? Did you choose your words with care, or did things get messy? It's okay if it wasn't perfect. We're all learning here. Now here's where I want to hear from you. Arguments are a universal struggle, and the truth is, we've all had moments we're not proud of. So, drop into the comments and tell me, what's the hardest part about fighting fair? Is it pausing before you react? Is it listening when emotions run high? Or maybe keeping the past out of the present? Be honest. No judgment here. If you've enjoyed this, don't forget to hit that like button, because let's face it, we all need reminders to fight better, not bitter. And if you want more real talk on how to navigate relationships, life's curveballs, and everything in between, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. So, let's talk. Drop your stories, your struggles, and even your small victories in the comments. Who knows? Maybe this is the start of fighting fair, not just for you, but for all of us.